Wyatt's sneakers slapped the wooden stairs, each step echoing like a warning shot through the quiet house. "Mom, we're leaving." "Now," he said, voice trembling but firm. His face was pale, too pale for a 12-year-old who'd spent the day catching fireflies and drinking lemonade on his grandparents' porch. My hands were still wet from the sink when I turned toward him. We were supposed to be here for peace. Just a weekend at my parents' perfect Ohio home. Neat lawns, flag fluttering, cookies always cooling on the counter. A safe restart after the divorce. The kind of place that looked so normal it made your own chaos feel imaginary. But the look in my son's eyes wasn't normal. It was the look of someone who'd seen something he shouldn't. "Wyatt, what happened?" I asked, drying my hands. He didn't answer. He grabbed my wrist, tight, and pulled me toward the hallway that led to the basement. My heart started to trip over itself. That basement had always been off limits when I was a kid. Dad called it his workbench zone. I'd never questioned it. The smell of paint thinner and iron had always clung to it, like something buried too deep in memory to name. The door was open now. A slow, cold breath of air drifted up from the dark, carrying the scent of bleach, metal, and something else, something wet and old, like rain trapped in concrete. I hesitated, but Wyatt was already halfway down the steps. I followed, each creak of the wooden stairs echoing louder than it should have. The single pull chain clicked, and a weak bulb stuttered to life, throwing jumpy shadows across pegboards lined with neatly labeled jars, nails, bolts, clamps, screws. Everything was in perfect order. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. Then I saw it, the bookshelf. It had always been there against the far wall, stacked with my father's old repair manuals and VHS tapes from his church outreach projects. But Wyatt was running his hand along its side like he was searching for something. His fingers found a notch and pushed. The entire shelf shifted with a sigh, gliding on hidden casters. Behind it, a narrow doorway yawned open. A secret room. One I had never been told existed. Inside, the air felt heavier, colder. A single bulb flickered overhead, revealing a metal cot bolted to the floor and a ring embedded in the concrete, a strap looped through it. Against the wall, file boxes were stacked like bricks, and beside them, a milk crate filled with VHS tapes. The labels were written in thick black marker, every one of them starting with the same word. Erin, age 5. Erin, age 7. Erin, room. Erin, settlement, my name. My life. Dates I didn't remember. My throat dried out. My fingers trembled as I pulled one of the files free. Polaroids spilled onto the floor. Me in a hospital gown, me with an arm in a sling, me with an oxygen mask. I stared at them, trying to summon memories that wouldn't come. Each photo was paperclipped to medical bills, legal forms, letters on lawyer letterheads, words like liability, payout, settlement, disbursement. My parents' signatures were on every page. Wyatt touched my shoulder and pointed to the workbench. A plastic toolbox sat open, filled with coiled wires and a small black phone that buzzed softly. I picked it up. The screen showed one new message. Court moved to Monday. Prep the boy. Same script, prep the boy. My skin turned electric. I looked around, every surface too neat, too intentional. A timer mounted on the wall caught my eye, bright red digital numbers counting down from 001837. The device was strapped to a black box connected to the gas line with fresh plumber's tape. "Mom," Wyatt whispered. "It's counting down." Every cell in my body screamed at once. I lunged for the stairs. The air upstairs shifted. A floorboard creaked. "Erin?" Dad's voice floated down, warm, casual, wrong. "Want me to fire up the grill?" "Thought we'd do burgers tonight." The timer ticked to 001812. I froze halfway up the steps, my son clinging to my arm. "Dad?" My voice cracked, no answer. Just another creak. Then the soft hum of the refrigerator cutting off, like the power had been rerouted. The house felt alive, listening. Wyatt's hand found mine. "We have to go," he said again, his voice a whisper. We started back up the stairs. Halfway up, another sound joined the ticking, an old phone ringing somewhere deeper in the dark. Not the burner phone. A landline, muffled and buried behind the walls. It rang twice. 3 times. Then stopped. Silence. Then, from a small speaker hidden in the ceiling above the workbench, a voice crackled through, metallic, genderless. "Calm. Don't go upstairs." Wyatt's grip on my hand tightened until it hurt. The air was thick now, the kind of silence that screams before it breaks. My mind spun. What did that mean? Don't go upstairs because of him? Because of the timer, Mom? Wyatt whispered. I turned toward him, but my eyes were already fixed on something else. Something new. A small camera lens, red light blinking faintly, embedded in the far wall just above the cot, watching us, recording us. The voice on the speaker returned, lower this time, deliberate. Stay where you are! The truth's been waiting, and in that moment, surrounded by the ghosts of my own childhood, by documents I couldn't remember signing and injuries I couldn't remember getting, I realized something I hadn't dared to think before. Maybe I hadn't forgotten those memories. Maybe someone had made me forget them. The timer ticked down another 20 seconds. My pulse tried to match it. Wyatt's voice cracked. Mom, what's happening? I didn't have an answer. I just knew we were standing inside a lie that had been built brick by brick for decades, and it was starting to unravel. Above us, the sound of footsteps moved closer to the basement door. Then the faint click of a latch sliding shut. We were trapped. And somewhere behind the wall, the hidden phone began to ring again. Cliffhanger. The ringing stopped mid-tone, replaced by that same calm voice whispering through the ceiling, "Don't go upstairs." My hand shook so badly that I could barely grip the wrench. The gas valve screeched as I twisted it, praying it would stop whatever countdown that red timer had begun. Wyatt stood behind me, eyes fixed on the glowing numbers as they kept slipping lower, second after second. The basement light buzzed weakly overhead, flickering like it knew something terrible was coming. Above us, I could hear the muffled sounds of life continuing, as if nothing was wrong. Grandma rinsing a casserole dish, Dad's boots pacing across the kitchen floor, the faint hum of the refrigerator. The house was alive in that eerily perfect way, humming like a polite machine pretending everything was normal. Why would they? Wyatt started, his voice trembling. Later, I cut him off, grabbing the burner phone off the workbench. A new notification flashed on the cracked screen. Make ER look tired. No smiling. Bring inhaler. I froze. Attached to the text was a PDF. I opened it, and my blood went cold. It was a court document titled Emergency Guardianship Packet. My name was listed as respondent, incompetent adult. Wyatt's name appeared under minor ward. Petitioners, Daniel and Ruth Whitaker. My parents, they weren't just gaslighting me. They were planning to erase me. Before I could speak, the intercom speaker above the stairs hissed with static, followed by my father's voice, flat, distorted, too calm. Back from the basement, kiddos? He said cheerfully. Erin, the neighbors will see you. Come up smiling. The way he said smiling made my stomach twist. I looked up at the ceiling vents. He could hear us. He could probably see us too. We need to move, I whispered. Wyatt started yanking files off the shelves while I stuffed the tapes into a laundry bag. The strap tied to the metal ring on the floor clanked against the concrete. He froze at the sound, eyes darting to me. Before I could shush him, the floorboards above us groaned. Footsteps, slow, steady, coming down. Panic surged through me. I scanned for an escape and spotted the laundry chute near the old furnace. Without hesitation, I opened it. Wyatt, inside now, he hesitated. What about you? Go. Meet me at the car. I kissed his forehead, pushed him in, and listened to the dull thump as he landed in the pile of towels below. Then I turned toward the stairs. Dad appeared halfway down, his smile polished and perfect, the same one he wore in every church bulletin and bake sale photo. His sleeves were rolled neatly, his wedding ring glinting under the flickering bulb. Oh, honey, he said, his voice thick with condescending sweetness. You weren't supposed to see my tools. His gaze drifted to the bag in my hand. His smile faltered, just a flicker, but it was enough. Put that down, he said softly. The neighborhood potluck starts in 20 minutes. Your mother made that peach thing you like. I pointed toward the timer on the wall. What is that, Dad? Safety alarm, he said instantly, his tone still calm but his eyes tightening. You always were dramatic. A dull click echoed above us. The door at the top of the stairs. It had just locked, my breath caught. What did you do? He sighed like a disappointed teacher. Erin, you need to trust us. We've talked to the lawyer. You've been unwell. We're going to help you. We always help. I stepped back toward the gas line. By declaring me incompetent? By taking my son? Temporarily, he said. You'll feel so relieved when the decisions are off your plate. You can rest. He can thrive. His voice was so calm it almost convinced me. Almost. But then my eyes caught the faint outline of glove prints around the timer's screws. Fresh. He moved first. I bolted. He lunged and caught my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. Instinct took over. I slammed my elbow into his ribs, twisting free. His breath left him in a sharp grunt. I sprinted toward the breaker box, flipped every switch, and plunged the basement into darkness. For one beautiful second, I thought I'd won. Then his laughter filled the room, low, unhurried, cruel. "It's battery-backed, Erin," he said. "That's the point!" From the chute above, Wyatt's frightened voice echoed down. "Mom, the car won't start. The key fob doesn't work." I swallowed hard. The key fob wasn't broken. It was being jammed. I stumbled through the dark, running my hands along the wall until I hit the intercom panel. I ripped it out. Sparks bit into my palm. Upstairs, I heard the front door lock once, then twice, then a third time. Each click was deliberate, final, locked, locked, locked. Another vibration buzzed from the workbench. I grabbed the phone and looked at the message preview glowing in the dark. "Sheriff's on his way. Same story as last time. Trespassing, erratic behavior. Holder. Last time?" I whispered aloud. Dad's breath brushed my ear. I hadn't heard him move, but he was suddenly right behind me. "You were 5, he murmured, his tone gentle like a bedtime story. "You don't remember." A memory tried to surface. Hospital lights, a strange woman's voice calling my name, my father's hand over my eyes, but it slipped away. "What did you do to me?" I asked. He didn't answer. The air hissed. I turned toward the sound and saw a thin wisp of smoke curling from the vent above the water heater. "Gas." "Dad," I whispered. "What's in the box?" He smiled in the dark. "Proof that we love you." The words sent a shiver so deep it felt like it reached my bones. The timer glowed through the blackness, row 10 or 8, and somewhere inside the walls the hiss grew louder, steady and patient, like a snake waiting for its cue. The house that had always smiled for cameras wasn't smiling anymore. It was watching, breathing, preparing, and I realized, as I clutched the phone and listened to that terrible hiss, that this house didn't just want to keep us, it wanted to erase us. Cliffhanger. The timer hit 0010 Mary, and the gas hiss grew louder, wrapping the basement in invisible danger as Dad whispered, "Smile for the cameras, Erin, it's almost showtime." We didn't wait for the sheriff. I didn't even think. The moment Dad's voice disappeared into the intercom hiss, I grabbed Wyatt's hand and pulled him toward the bulkhead doors at the back of the basement. The hinges screamed as I forced them open, sunlight slicing into the dark like a rescue. We stumbled out into the backyard, hearts thundering, the smell of gas clinging to our clothes. My fingers were trembling so hard I could barely lock the door behind us. I didn't care. I just knew one thing. We had to get out before that timer hit 0. We sprinted through the lilac bushes, past the white fence, past the bird bath where I used to play as a child. Everything looked the same, perfectly suburban, painfully normal. I hated it. Every mailbox, every smiling porch flag, every manicured hedge. It was all part of their illusion. I couldn't breathe until we reached the cul-de-sac's tiny brick library, the one that smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. The librarian, Mrs. Harper, looked up from her desk as we burst through the door. She smiled in that sweet, automatic way small-town people do when they recognize you from church. "Well, Erin, haven't seen you in ages. How's your mama?" I swallowed the bile that rose in my throat. "Can I use a computer?" "Of course, honey," she said. "Same old password. Story time." Wyatt and I rushed to the back corner where the computers hummed quietly. My hands hovered over the keyboard for a second, shaking too hard to type. Then I forced myself to focus. I opened the browser and typed State Attorney General tip line, then mandatory reporter, then anonymous evidence upload. We plugged in the flash drive I'd yanked from Dad's workbench. Dozens of files loaded onto the screen, photos, medical records, financial documents. I didn't have time to read them. I just selected everything and hit upload. The progress bar crawled forward like a dying heartbeat. "Mom," Wyatt whispered, pointing out the window. A sheriff's cruiser rolled slowly past the library, its lights off. It stopped in front of my parents' house. I recognized the driver instantly, Sergeant Wallace, Dad's fishing buddy. He knocked once, didn't wait, and went inside. My stomach dropped. Come on, I whispered, watching the progress bar inch to 40%. My inbox pinged, startling me. A new email, no sender. Just a single line of text. Meet me where the swings squeak. Bring nothing electronic. I stared at it for a second, heartbeat in my throat. Wyatt tugged my sleeve. Who's that? I don't know, I said. But my gut whispered something different. Someone did know us. We left the computer running and slipped out the back door. The air outside was heavy with heat. Behind the library, the small park shimmered in the late afternoon sun. The swings creaked lazily in the breeze, the same sound from my childhood summers. On the far bench sat a woman in a dark hoodie and ball cap, head lowered, hands clasped. Erin, she said softly when I approached. Hearing my name in her voice felt like déjà vu. I don't know you, I said automatically, though something deep inside me, something older than memory, flinched. The woman pulled off her cap. A fall of auburn hair escaped, framing a face I half recognized. Brown eyes, freckles across her nose. The shape of her mouth, mine. My name's Jamie, she said, her voice trembling. I'm your mother's sister. I tried to stop this 29 years ago, but they had me declared unstable and put on a bus out of state. I've been watching them ever since. The world tilted. Stop what? She handed me a small metal key with a worn tag that read, Woodland Savings, Box 312. This is everything, she said. Your life. Birth records, hospital photos, the forged adoption papers, the checks they cashed in your name after every accident. They built an empire out of you. I couldn't breathe. My mind rebelled. You're lying. I wish I was, she said quietly. The first time was when you were 5. Stairs, broken arm, hospital visit, lawsuit settlement. The second was when you were 7. Faulty heater, smoke inhalation, another payout. By the time you turned 10, they'd made nearly $500,000. Every injury was staged, every photo documented, and they made you forget. Wyatt clung to my arm. What about me? Jamie's expression darkened. That's why I reached out now. They're repeating the pattern. I saw the micro cameras in his bedroom last week. The inhaler prescription, same doctor as before. The appointment with Dr. Kellerman. They were going to stage another incident. But this time, they wanted it to look fatal. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and went pale. He knows I'm talking to you. Across the street, the sheriff's cruiser door opened. Wallace stepped out, Dad right behind him. Dad's smile was blinding, practiced, confident, the same one he used at charity events. Wallace's eyes swept across the park, scanning. Looking. Jamie's voice dropped to a whisper. We need to go, now. Before I could respond, a beige minivan turned into the lot and rolled to a stop near the swings. The door slid open. HOA President Linda Hartley climbed out, her smile as perfect as ever. The woman who handed out cookies at bake sales. The one who ticketed kids for riding bikes without helmets. Erin, she called gently, walking toward us. Can I talk to you? It's important. Jamie stiffened beside me. Careful. She's been close to them for years. But Linda's expression wasn't smug. It was broken. She stopped 3 steps away, lowering her voice. I moved next door 8 years ago for one reason, she said. To watch my daughter grow up. Her words barely made sense. What? I stammered. I'm not... Her eyes glistened. Yes, you are. Something in her tone hit me harder than any slap could. I shook my head, but she reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. Her hands were trembling. She opened it and held up a single photograph. A faded Polaroid of a 16-year-old girl in a hospital bed, exhausted, holding a newborn wrapped in a yellow blanket. On the baby's tag were 3 words, Baby Girl Hartley, and behind the young mother's shoulder, the nurse's hand rested on the bed rail. The nurse wore a wedding ring I knew by heart, my father's. The world stopped spinning. Wyatt looked from me to the photo, eyes wide. Mom, what does that mean? I stared at the Polaroid, at the girl who had my face and my eyes, and realized she wasn't some stranger in a file. She was my mother. The truth hit like a blade through my chest. The people who raised me hadn't just lied. They'd stolen me. Cliffhanger. The Polaroid slipped from Linda's shaking hands and fluttered to the grass. On its back, scrawled in faded ink, was one final note. Keep her quiet. DW. We didn't whisper anymore. Secrets only survive in silence, and I was done being quiet. Linda, my real mother, spoke fast, her words trembling but sharp, like someone cutting through years of barbed wire. I was 16, she said, her eyes wet but unflinching. Your grandparents ran that so-called church charity. They helped girls like me, helped by taking their babies. They told everyone I was unstable, and by the time I found a lawyer, the judge had already signed the adoption papers. Your birth certificate had a new name. Their name. She looked down, voice cracking. I've spent the last 20 years living near them, waiting. Collecting everything. They couldn't erase me forever. Jamie sat beside her, scrolling through a flash drive full of documents. We have enough now, she said quietly. More than enough. I ran my hands through my hair, trying to make sense of it. They have the sheriff, the neighbors, the whole damn town, I said. They control the narrative. No one's going to believe this. Linda looked up, fire in her eyes. They love being admired, Erin. That's their weakness. We'll give them the audience they crave and let them destroy themselves. That night, the neighborhood gathered at the elementary school gym for the monthly HOA meeting. The folding chairs were neatly aligned in rows. There was lemonade and cookies, a patriotic banner, and a clipboard full of neighborhood bylaws. It was all so nauseatingly normal that my knees nearly gave out. My father stood near the back, chatting with Sheriff Wallace, both laughing like nothing had happened. My mother, Ruth, the woman who had raised me on bedtime prayers and staged hospital photos, was ladling punch, smiling at neighbors, her nails still the same soft pink that used to stroke my hair when I had nightmares. When they saw me, Dad's smile brightened a notch, but his eyes went cold. Erin, he said, you made it. I was worried after your outburst earlier. My voice trembled, but my resolve didn't. You always were a good liar, Dad. He tilted his head, grin still plastered on. Honey, why don't you take a seat? Instead, I walked straight to the front. Jamie followed with a laptop, Linda with a stack of papers. Conversations died. Heads turned. Phones lifted. This town loved drama, just not the kind that shattered its own mirror. I took the microphone. This will take 5 minutes, I said. And it will change everything you think you know about Daniel and Ruth Whitaker. I started slow. A photo of me at 3 years old, arm in a cast, a hospital bill from Children's Mercy, a settlement letter. Another photo, age 7, bruises and bandages. Another payout. The documents glowed on the projector screen as gasps rippled through the crowd. Then came the guardianship petition they'd filed last week, declaring me unfit, claiming I was mentally unstable. They wanted custody of my son, I said, voice cracking, so they could keep the cycle going. I played the next video clip, grainy, shot from the hidden camera in the basement. Dad's voice filled the gym, instructing a child to look tired, to remember the stairs. Gasps turned to murmurs, then to outrage. In the back row, Dad's jaw tightened. He raised his hands in mock surrender, stepping forward like a preacher calming his flock. This is sad, he said smoothly. My daughter's been unwell for years. Ruth, call Dr. Wasserstein. But Linda's voice cut through the noise. My name is Linda Hartley, she said, stepping into the light. I am Erin's biological mother. The Whitakers stole her from the hospital on April 3rd, 1996. I have birth records, DNA results, and sworn affidavits, everything. The gym went dead silent. Ruth's face drained of color. Her trembling hand clutched the punch ladle like it might anchor her to the illusion of normal. Dad didn't blink. His smile froze in place like wet paint under glass. Sheriff Wallace moved forward, hand brushing his holster. This isn't the place for personal accusations, he said. Let's keep this civil. Jamie stood up, holding a stamped envelope. Public corruption complaint already filed, she said loudly. State Attorney General has the full file, and this meeting is being live-streamed to their office right now. She turned toward a group of moms filming on their phones. Hi, Brenda. Keep rolling. The gym erupted, shouts, whispers, cell phones flashing like a strobe. Dad turned, eyes darting for an escape route. Ruth reached for his arm, but he shook her off, his mask slipping. Then the lights went out. The gym fell into darkness and gasps. I heard chairs scrape, a child cry, someone dropped their phone. A single beam of light appeared, a projector flickering to life on its own, hijacked by a hidden feed. On the far wall, an image appeared. The basement. The timer. Dad's hands tightening the tape on the gas line, his face partially visible in the corner of the frame. Screams erupted. People stumbled for the exits, but the doors didn't budge. The projector switched to another angle. Wyatt sitting on the cot, hands bound with duct tape, tears streaking his face. My blood went cold. My phone buzzed. I yanked it out of my pocket. A text, no sender. Just a video. Wyatt's face filled the screen, whispering, "Mom! He grabbed me at the house when the lights cut. I'm in the basement." The door's locked. The timer's back on. It says 00959, the projector snapped off. The room was pitch black again. Then, over the chaos, a voice boomed through the gym speakers, calm, measured, and unmistakable. My father's. "If anyone leaves this room before the Q&A," he said, "something regrettable might happen." "Sit tight," the crowd froze. Panic turned to dread. Someone screamed for the sheriff, but Wallace had vanished. I was already moving, pushing through the darkness, through the panicked crowd, through the choking heat of too many breaths and too many lies. My body moved before my mind did. As I burst through the side exit into the night, my parents' house came into view down the block. Every window glowed an eerie, uneven orange. Smoke curled from the vents. The basement windows pulsed like a heartbeat. And on my phone, Wyatt's trembling hand held the timer up to the camera as it ticked down from 0.09 darts. I started running. I floored the accelerator so hard the tires screamed. The car fishtailed around the corner, gravel pelting the undercarriage as the sirens behind us grew louder, higher, meaner, coming fast. Jamie sat in the passenger seat clutching the folder of evidence like it was oxygen, while Linda, my real mother, gripped the dashboard, whispering prayers between breaths. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't break us. The only thing that mattered was getting to Wyatt before the timer hit 0. We shot up the street toward my parents' perfect colonial home. The house looked the same as always, flags fluttering, porch light glowing, wind chimes swaying in the soft night air, but it wasn't the same house anymore. It was a monster wearing wallpaper. Smoke curled from the vents. The front door was wide open, swaying like an invitation or a trap. I slammed the car into park and bolted out. The air smelled like metal and gas. My legs moved before my brain could catch up. I took the porch steps in 2 leaps, shoving the door wide. The hallway lights flickered. Family photos smiled from the walls, mocking me with frozen perfection. Every picture of me as a child was a lie, staged for insurance adjusters, for neighbors, for sympathy. "Wyatt!" I screamed, racing for the basement. "Wyatt, answer me!" A muffled pounding answered from below. "Mom, I'm down here." His voice cracked in terror. I flew down the stairs. The timer glowed against the far wall. 007-28. My heart kicked against my ribs. Wyatt was trapped behind the steel door, beating it with his fists. Then a voice came from the dark corner of the room. Calm. Familiar. If you'd just played along, none of this would have been necessary. Dad stepped into the flickering light. A fire extinguisher gripped in his hands like a club. His once neat shirt was stained with sweat, his perfect hair plastered to his forehead. But his smile, that smile was still there. "You ruined everything, Erin," he said softly. "We could have been the heroes again. Angel grandparents saved troubled daughter and malnourished boy. The media would have eaten it up. Dr. Kellerman was ready to testify. Do you even understand how much people want to be fooled?" He swung. The extinguisher grazed my shoulder, sending a bolt of pain through my arm. I stumbled back, grabbed the nearest thing I could, a wrench, and swung it with everything I had. It cracked against the wall panel, sending sparks flying. The timer juddered, skipped, but kept counting down. 00641, open the door, I shouted. "He's 12, Dad. He's just a kid." "That's the point," he hissed. "You can't raise him. You never could. You ruin everything you touch. We've always had to clean up after you." Before I could respond, a trembling voice came from the stairs. "Danny," we both turned. Ruth, my so-called mother, stood halfway down, her hair loose, her eyes hollow. She looked smaller without the smile, without the pretense. "Stop," she said quietly. Dad's head snapped toward her. "Go upstairs, Ruth," she shook her head. "I'm the one who called the number in the toolbox," she said. Her voice was shaking, but her words cut through the noise. "I left the message at the Attorney General's office." "I couldn't let you do this again." He blinked, stunned. "It was you," I whispered. Tears streaked down her cheeks. I should have stopped him in 96, in 99, in 2006. I was a coward. I told myself it was love, but it was fear. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver key. Open the door, Danny. He didn't move. She threw the key toward me. It skittered across the floor. Dad lunged, but I kicked the toolbox into his shins. He went down with a howl. I dove for the key, jammed it into the lock, nothing. It wouldn't turn. He laughed from the floor, a sound more like an animal than a man. Electronic deadbolt, he said. Redundancy, Erin, you can't outsmart me. The timer ticked 0:04:59. I glanced at the hinges. Torque screws. I knew them well. Dad used them for everything. I grabbed the screwdriver bit from the bench and jammed it into the drill. My hands shook so hard the bit nearly slipped, but I forced it in, twisting with every ounce of strength I had. The first hinge screamed as it tore loose, then the second. Wyatt's fingers poked through the crack in the door. Push, I cried. Together we pushed. The frame groaned. The door bent. 0:03:21 upstairs, sirens cut through the night. Heavy boots thundered. State troopers. Wallace's voice barked something, then fell silent when another voice answered, firm, unfamiliar, in command. Dad crawled toward the timer, his hand reaching for a recessed switch. I slammed my palm down on his wrist, bones grinding. Look at me, he spat, his eyes black with hate. I made you. I made your story. No, I said, raising the wrench. You sold it. I brought the wrench down hard on the black box's mount. The display flickered, skipped. 0:02:09. Cut the feed. Jamie shouted from the stairs, yanking the hose from the gas line. Linda threw her weight onto the main valve, slamming it shut. The handle bent with a metallic screech, but the timer kept ticking. Battery backed, just like he'd said. A trooper burst down the stairs. Wallace stumbled behind him, shouting about jurisdiction. The trooper ignored him. Move! He yelled. Ruth crawled to the steel door, pressed her forehead against the cold metal, and whispered through the crack, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Her voice broke on the last word. The final hinge snapped. The door tilted, then crashed forward. Wyatt stumbled into my arms, sobbing, shaking, alive. I clutched him to my chest, feeling his heartbeat against mine. Run! I gasped. Run! We sprinted up the stairs, Jamie and Linda behind us. The troopers grabbed Dad as he tried to crawl toward the timer again, still muttering to himself. You'll never prove it, he said. You're dead tonight, legally speaking. The letter's already on your laptop. Time-stamped, perfect story. Perfect ending. Ruth stood above him, tears streaking her face. Then with trembling hands, she reached up and turned the basement intercom back on. Her voice echoed through the entire neighborhood. You hear that? She said. You hear him? And everyone did. Every neighbor. Every cop. Every person who'd ever believed in the Whitakers' perfect little family. The timer hit Orios Gario. A boom rocked the house. A pressure valve burst. Dust rained from the ceiling as the black box sparked and died. The house moaned like it was exhaling its final lie. Silence followed, deep, ringing, endless. Dad didn't fight when they cuffed him. He almost looked relieved. Ruth collapsed onto the steps, staring at her hands. I'll testify, she whispered. Every lie, every settlement, every judge, I'll tell it all. Outside, the neighborhood gathered in stunned silence, phones raised, their perfect suburb cracked open at last. Weeks later, justice came like a flood. Federal indictments, headlines. The sheriff resigned. Dr. Kellerman disappeared. DNA confirmed the truth. Linda was my mother. Jamie, my aunt, we moved. A new house. New sunrise. The kind of quiet you earn. One morning, Wyatt took my hand. Mom, he asked softly, are we finally safe? I thought of the timer, the lies, the basement that no longer existed. I smiled through tears. We're leaving, I said. Now. And for the first time in my life, now didn't mean escape. It meant begin.